So since we've recently gotten a ton of new Borderlands 4 information and gameplay, we've also gotten a look at tons of new legendary items, and I'm continuing my videos looking at a bunch of these legendary items. One of my previous videos, I went over 10 legendary weapons. In this video, I'm going to be going over 10 legendary shields. And shields are seeming to be quite a bit different from other Borderlands games. First off, we have a new shield type called armor instead of energy shields like normal. And it also seems on Borderlands 4 that there are going to be a lot stronger defenses. There also seems to be like an information tab in Borderlands 4 that gives you ARPG-like information. So you could see things like your resistances or your damage or your crit, all that type of stuff. And adding a stat panel like that with those defensive stats, I think means we're going to have to pay more attention to them. Also, it seems every shield in the game has some amount of base resist. Like one of the legendary shields we're going to look at could have 15% base radiation resistance. And it seems all shields will have some type of resist on it at a baseline, which means they're just generally going to be tankier than they were in previous games. Now, the first legendary shield we have is the Timekeeper's new shield. This is an armor shield, which we should probably go over. Armor is actually a different thing than normal energy shielding, which is the normal thing you would expect from Borderlands games. Armor shield is a different color, and it seems to work in a completely different way. It keeps regenerating no matter if you're taking damage or in or out of combat. I'm not exactly sure how it specifically works if you're not taking damage, if it regens more quickly, or if you're out of combat, it regens more quickly, but it's essentially more of a offensive type of shielding where even if you're taking damage, you're just constantly regenerating that armor. There's also a bunch of other different effects and things that can tie into armor, but it is built more as something that allows you to be much more offensive. And then this shield only rolled with its legendary part, which is Banunu. When equipped, increases maximum health by some amount, which is 258 here, grants health regen per second, and reduces damage taken by 33%. But this doesn't actually have any shielding or anything like that on it, even though it's an armor shield. So this gives you no actual shielding or armor or anything, but it gives you massive health increases, a pretty big health regen per second, and massive damage reduction. This shield seems like it's going to be very tanky, and if there's any build that's like max health builds with no shielding or anything like that, this will probably be the shield you want. Seems very strong defensively, even though it works in a very different way to normal shields. And then next up, we have the Scrapper Emollient Hoarder, which is a Vladof shield, and its legendary weapon part is Refreshment. On kill, 50% chance to spawn an ammo booster that instantly refills your gun, which is gonna be pretty crazy, maybe with certain builds. I'm not exactly sure how the ammo economy is gonna be in Borderlands 4. We'll need to play more to really feel that out, because there is a possibility that ammo is actually more scarce, especially for some weapons with some crazy rolls. So this could actually be pretty good, especially depending on what type of endgame content we get. If it's not going up against one boss, if you're going up against bunches of enemies, this could be really good. Also, something to note, this says it instantly refills your gun. I'm presuming this is the magazine, so you could potentially not have to reload with that. Then it has a roll of Absorb. When equipped, gain 15% chance to absorb bullets, adding them to your ammo count instead. We've had this in effects in previous Borderlands games. Then we have Scavenger. On armor segment filled, refills up to 20% of the current gun's magazine. Now, as you could guess, this is another armor shield, and as we went over, armor just constantly regenerates. It is split into different segments, and that's the main way a lot of these effects will play into armor, is say on a segment being destroyed or a segment being refilled. And then next up, we have the Heavyweight Shield, which is another armor shield. Its legendary weapon part is Bare Knuckle. On melee hit, it consumes an armor segment to grant 100% melee damage. And then when armor shield is empty, it grants plus 50% melee damage just when all of your armor is gone. Now, depending on how armor is going to be regenning, how quickly it is, how slow it is, that 50% may not be super common. Now, if you're in combat and you have 0 armor, you'll probably be getting shot somewhat decently, so it'll be out for a while. But if you have some amount of synergy to keep regenerating armor segments quickly, that 100% melee damage increase could be pretty massive. This is one of those shields that probably won't be used a lot, except for very specific circumstances. But then it has some additional rolls. Knockback on armor segment break, knocks back enemies and grants 30% movement speed for 5 seconds. So this is actually pretty crazy. Even just in a melee build, it will let you get to things quicker. But even as this combination, like a speed farming build could could be really good with this too, because you just melee something and you instantly get that move speed. Then we have Mini Nova on armor segment break, triggers a Nova that deals some amount of damage. So all these synergize quite well. We're not exactly sure how shields are rolling. We don't know if getting these other rolls that also are based upon armor segment breaks, if those would always roll on the shield or if it's just a good roll. And then next up, we have the Watts for Dipper, and this is an energy shield, so it works more like shields from every previous Borderlands game. The legendary weapon part is Overshield Eater. When energy shield is active, enemies have a 12% chance to drop an overshield when hit. When overshield is also active, it grants you plus 25% shock damage. So this one is actually quite interesting and is going to be really strong with builds that use a lot of shock, or for pretty much any build that would just be using a shock weapon, because there are also other ways, especially through like Vault Hunter skill trees, to get overshield from other things. So if you have a lot of things built in to give you overshield, you'll just be able to keep up plus 25% shock damage from your shield, which is a crazy damage increase to just have up a lot from a shield specifically. Then this also has Reflect. When shield is up, there's a 15% chance to reflect projectiles just for more survivability. Then Mag Booster on kill, there's a 15% chance to spawn an ammo booster that instantly refills your gun. So what's also interesting is this is basically a really weak version of one of the legendary shield powers we already went over. So Mag Booster could be decent, but it's also kind of a low chance, so it's not nearly as consistent. But I think if you have a weapon that's really slow to reload or something, having Mag Booster on pretty much any shield could be pretty good over time. And then we have the Mini Nova Sharpened Principle. This is another armor shield, and its legendary weapon part is Shield Boy. Spawns a Shield Boy when the last armor segment breaks. Not sure what a Shield Boy is. I'm assuming this is something that probably regenerates shield maybe, or maybe it's like some small summon that's just a shield or something in front of you to try to block damage. Not at all sure what Shield Boy is, but it sounds like it could be pretty interesting. Then the other rolls are Bladed. On armor segment filled, grants 13% weapon damage for 5 seconds. I think that one's probably going to be pretty good on pretty much anybody that's using an armor shield. Just getting a damage increase when an armor segment is filled is crazy, especially if you have ways to fill it more quickly. Then Mini Nova, again on armor segment break, it does a Mini Nova of damage. So we really don't know what this one is, but I'm presuming that the Shield Boy is probably going to help you regenerate your armor shielding more quickly, or maybe it's something you pick up to instantly do it. And then we have the Protein Cell, which is another energy shield, and its legendary part is Direct Current. Ground Slam to toggle this effect. While enabled, it drains shield over time to grant 40% bonus shock damage, and damage taken passes through the shield. This is an effect that I probably wouldn't want to use really, because I don't really like ground slams that much, but this effect is actually really interesting and one of the more unique effects I've seen on a Borderlands shield. So first off, you have to ground slam, that'll activate this. When it's activated, it'll constantly drain your shield over time to give you a bunch of bonus shock damage. That's pretty much part one. But if you have ways to constantly regenerate energy shield somehow, that could be really strong for constant damage increases. But what's also really interesting is the second part, which is damage taken will pass through the shield when active. Now what this actually means is when you take damage when this effect is active, it's not going to hit your shield, it's going to hit your health. It's not going to pass through you physically, because that would mean you're just immune for the whole time. That'd be way too strong. It's just going to hit your health, so you can keep your shield up to keep getting that damage bonus. So that's really interesting, and it has a really big payoff when doing it well and having a build that can help with it, but a really big downside that you don't have a shield and you're not getting like massive health boost that other shields that don't actually have shielding on them would normally give you. So it's a very interesting shield effect. Then we have Absorb. When equipped, grants 15% chance to absorb bullets, adding them to your ammo count. And then Nova, when the energy shield breaks, it triggers a Nova that does quite a bit more damage than the armor segment break, but that's also because that's on armor segment break. This is on your full shield break. And next up, we have the Cinder Shelly, which is an energy shield. Its legendary role is Glass. When damaged, grants a stack of Resolve, which reduces damage taken by 2% per stack up to 25 stacks, so up to 50% damage reduction. When the shield breaks, release a Nova dealing damage, and with each stack of Resolve, increasing the damage of that Nova by 20%. Now, based upon the level of the shield and the Nova damage actually seems to be pretty decent baseline, but you could get a massive damage increase depending on how many stacks of of resolve you actually have. I'll also keep in mind those stacks of resolve seem to be based upon when the shield is actually active on you. Now this doesn't specify if the resolve is removed when your shield breaks and pops a nova and gives a big damage increase. If the stacks of resolve aren't removed, if you had the ability to constantly regenerate even small amounts of energy shield, you would be able to keep getting that resolve pretty easily and get massive damage increases, because you could get like 500% increased damage off of this nova if you had all the stacks stacked up. That would also be giving you 50% damage reduction, which is why I think you probably lose the resolve stacks once the shield breaks and the nova procs. But this is also a really strong effect for both damage and damage reduction. Even if they completely remove the nova effect from this, the shield would be really strong. Then the other roles are reflect. While shield is up, there's a 15% chance to reflect projectiles, and then adaptive, when equipped, grants plus 16% max health. That's also a variable role. When the shield is active, it grants 40% resistance to the last damage type for 4 seconds. That also seems to be a variable role, but this is a very strong defensive role, just a max health increase and massive resistance to damage types when the shield is active. So again, it seems like they're wanting us to be pretty tanky or have the ability to get pretty tanky in Borderlands 4, which may also indicate having some pretty crazy endgame. And then we have the extra medium, another energy shield, and its legendary role is a Nucleoynthesis. When energy shield breaks or fills, it triggers a nova that deals a decent amount of damage. And this is a pretty interesting one because it's a nova on fill and on break. So depending on what type of build you have, depending on how you can regenerate your energy shield based upon what you're using, it may be incredibly strong in both ways. You could have something that constantly regenerates small amount of shield and you could constantly get it to break that way, or you could have something that maybe has a good way to fully fill your shield every once in a while. It could be a good way to proc Nova that way. So could be some pretty strong effects with this, but this one is I'd say a bit more boring. Then it has the siphon effect. When dealing damage, there's a 10% chance to grant 63 overshield. Now with overshield also being a new effect in Borderlands 4, which sounds exactly like what it is. It's basically just overshield on top of your shield. It's a different color and can proc from a bunch of different effects. I'm not sure how overshield plays into or synergizes with a bunch of normal energy shielding effects, but there is that possibility as well. And then next up, we have the Guardian Angel, another energy shield, and this legendary role is Wings of Grace. When equipped, grants faster revival from Fight for Your Life. When Fight for Your Life expires, grants 1 free second wind every 300 seconds. So this one is just a fully defensive shield. I'm not really the biggest fan of this. If they added something else to make it a much more solo-friendly shield, it would be pretty good, because the 1 free revive every 300 seconds is nice for solo play, especially if you're in harder content. Maybe if you're doing something that you can't die in the run of. But the first effect is kind of for group play. So if they replace that and added something more for solo play, I think it'd be much more interesting. But the other roles are sturdy. When damaging enemies, there's a 5% chance to grant 20% damage reduction for 5 seconds. That's a really big damage reduction, but it's a really low chance for that to happen. And health booster, when damaged, there's some chance to spawn a health booster that gives you up to 25% of your health. So just another, I think that's 50%. It is blocked behind some other UI. But if that's a decent chance roll to get this health, it could be a pretty good survivability roll. And for a final shield, we have the Pandora Momento, which is an energy shield, and its legendary role is Psychosis. When damaged, grants plus 15% elemental resistance and 50 plus resistance to the last damage type received for 5 seconds. So this is a lot of resistances. If you're going up against a lot of elemental enemies, a lot of enemies using elemental weapons, this will be incredibly strong. Just 15% elemental resistance just for taking damage is pretty good, and then the 50% for last damage taken is really good. What's interesting to note is this is a shield without a base elemental resistance on it. Every other shield we've looked at, or most of them, have had a 15% increase to some resistance element. So it seems like it's kind of removing that and just giving you the 15% for taking damage anywhere, which will be up basically 100% of the time. And it has Nova on energy shield break. It triggers a Nova. Then utility, when shield is empty, grants plus 28% gun handling and 15% movement speed. So some more utility effects when you have no shielding. But that's all 10 of the legendary shields I want to take a look at, and I think one of the biggest takeaways from this is that there are going to be some pretty strong defensive effects on a lot of the shields of Borderlands 4. We did get to see some more damage focused ones as well, which will also be really strong, but it seems like we have the possibilities of getting really tanky in Borderlands 4, and it seems like as a whole, they're pushing us more into that direction, making me think the endgame is going to have a lot more damaging effects, making me think that there's going to be a much bigger emphasis on being tanky in Borderlands 4 and that actually mattering. But that's all I want to go over, so thanks for watching.